Hello there, Michael Furlong from RentrollMaximiser, and through this training tutorial what I'm looking to do is to help explain the process that we follow when we're moving our paper tick and flick forms, our checklists, our PDFs, the checklists that we would use in our property management tasks, and convert those into a task within PropertyMe. And so what I'm going to do, I'll now come across through to our task section and have a look at our templates. And we have a number of templates in through to here. So there are other videos, other training videos explaining the other workflows. And what I'm going to do is now have a look at existing owner number 2. So workflow audit number 2 and 37.02. These checklists have originated originally inside of our Trello board. And if I come across to our Trello board and I just move across, you can see we've got checklists in through to here. Now they're standard tick and flick checklists that we've got lots of those. And what I've done along the way is I've been working through and converting them into PropertyMe checklists or workflows that I'd like to call them. Now the category that we focus on is category 37. If I move across through to here, so I've got sections of the act sitting in there, and the objective of the Trello board is really simply to create a how-to guide. It's our operational guide. It's very similar to a procedures manual, but we run a digital procedures manual, and we're constantly updating, particularly when there's legislation changes. So if I move across to category 37 and it's property management workflow templates, we've already recorded videos for 3701, which is the property profile, and now we're working through to number 2. So if I open this up, the most recent update was in February of this year, and there's a whole series of different training tutorials, and this will be another one that we've gone through. And so what I typically would do is I would work through and I'd say, why do we need to, or what's the benefit of having checklists sitting inside of PropertyMe? What's the problem that we're looking to solve? And ideally the problem we're looking to solve here is that we're creating a level of consistent customer service. We're setting a framework so that each property is treated the same way. We're removing the paper aspect and moving more digital, and then therefore we can record those and make reports from those. But more importantly, it's a good opportunity to use these as part of our audits. So when will we use these? So conduct an internal owner file audit on each existing property in the portfolio as part of the agency's compliance procedures. After conducting an internal owner file audit, it was discovered that the following documents were missing or needed to be updated, and then we work through our steps, and I'll show you those in a second. So there are 15 steps, and then we've got our checklists that are sitting inside of here. So this is where this is originated. So what I'm going to do, I'll come across and open up this portfolio, this task, and this is exactly what we were looking at now. So conduct an internal owner audit file. I just read that. After conducting the internal audit, it was discovered that the following outstanding documents need to be updated, requested, created, sent to the owner as soon as possible. So let's just work through these steps. Step 1, work through the full list of actions and delete any of the line items that are not applicable to this owner or this property, only leaving the items that are specific to this owner and property. So removing things like trust account if the property's owned in a private name. And so what we do is when we work through the actual audit, and I'll go through this in a second, we would click this one, it will change the progress, and then we would say, okay, proof of ownership, we have that, tick. If we get down to here and we know that the property is owned in an individual name, so what we'd be able to do is come across to anything that's relevant to a trust, so property owned in a trust, and we would delete that. And I won't do it now because it's part of our framework. And so just working through there. So landlord building, and the other one here as well. Let's just say, for example, the property was in an individual name and not in an owner's corporation, then we would remove those ones also. If it was a strata property and the building insurance was managed by the strata company, then we would remove the building insurance inside of it. So that's our first step. First step is go through and identify any of the items that are not relevant to this particular property or this particular owner. Work through the existing documents on file to establish the valid, current and enforceable documents that can be used, and establish a list of documents that are invalid, missing, expired or old, maybe even unenforceable. So what we would do is we would go into the owner card. In this particular instance, I don't have documents sitting inside of our folders. This is a demo setup. So if I come across to one of our properties, let's have a look inside of here. We would come to our owner card, and look at our documents. And whatever documents would be sitting inside of here, we would download those documents into the Google folder, which would be here, download them into the owner section there. And so you're dumping all of the documents straight into the owner section and auditing from within the Google Drive. That's the objective. So if I move back to the task, so that's step 2. We're taking any of the documents. Now you may already have a Dropbox, a OneDrive or a Google Drive, and whatever documents are there. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to only work on the most recent documents, never delete any documents. So if there is, unless of course there's a duplicate of the same document saved. So if you had the two PDFs saved of the same authority, exactly the same authority, you would remove one. But if you've got multiple authorities, so maybe one from 10 years ago, one from 6 years ago, one from 3 years ago, and you've now just updated a new one, all 4 of those documents would be saved into the Google Drive, and one would be uploaded back into the PropertyMe owner file. Work through the documents, and then you would be renaming those documents as well. There may be examples of documents that are valid and enforceable, however are not current. This may apply to previous exclusive leasing management authorities and fee schedules, or older versions of the owner's instruction form, or maybe rental minimum standards declarations. These documents should be named old, indicating that they're valid, however still need to be updated. So when would this be applicable? If we had, for example, a fee schedule from the managing agency authority, and that fee schedule was from 5 years ago, and we've updated our fees schedule since, we've got a more current one, then it's still valid, it's still enforceable. However, it's an old document, it needs to be updated. So in the prefix of the file name, what you're doing is you're calling it, instead of compliant, compliant to me would indicate that yes, it's valid, enforceable and current. And so I'd be naming this at the beginning in capital letters, old, and old ELMA, old OIF, old minimum standards, old fee schedule. And so by doing that, what it indicates when I'm looking at it from the Google Drive, it's very easy to identify that those documents need to be updated. Step 4, once you have established which documents are missing, expired, unenforceable or old, then prepare the updated documents and send them to the owner. It's critical that the property manager speaks to the owner first to explain why these new documents are required and to explain each document prior to sending them out. Failure to speak to the owner can result in a higher chance of transfer of management. So if you're using a Vic Forms, a Flick It Over, an Inspection Express, whatever the template is that, or the platform is that you're using for your documents, create new documents, and then we would need to be sending those out to the owner, particularly if they're digital signing. Very, very important, that last point, is that you need to make sure that the property manager has had a conversation with the owner prior to updating any documents. And the reason for that is because if the owner all of a sudden, just going through their day, receives a series of links asking for documents to be updated, there's no urgency from their end. There is from our end, but there's no urgency from their end to one, open it, reply, complete the documents and send them back. And so typically the triggers that I would use when we're updating new owners documents would be simply the trigger of a brand new property. We would be doing that anyway. a lease renewal, when the same renter is going to be staying in the tenancy and renewing a lease, we would audit the documents, and there's a sense of urgency there. Whenever there's a new tenancy, so an advertising campaign, we would be auditing the property then. Then when there's a break lease or a renter transfer. You could also probably throw in there a rent increase or a rent review. And so they're the times when it's important for the owner, and you're able to easily justify that it's a good time for us to be auditing the documents and updating them. Step 5, when there is evidence of a document that's deemed current, compliant, valid, acceptable and enforceable, check off the relevant task in the line. And so when we would work through here, again, if we had a scenario where we've got proof of ownership, we would tick that one off, and maybe a photo ID. You may not need a power of attorney, so you would delete that one. And then we come back through, is there a valid and enforceable exclusive leasing authority, updated after 29th of March 2021, and does it have a current fee schedule? So it'd be ticking those ones as well. When the new documents have been returned to the agency, check and verify the accuracy and enforceability of the document. So what you're looking for is you're looking to make sure that the document complies with the standards of the agency. Has it been signed by a registered owner? Has it been signed by the agents? Has it been signed by the agent prior to being sent out? Is it dated? Are there any changes? Now, with electronic signatures and electronic documentation, the owner can't change things. But if you're using a Vic Forms and you may be posting it out and you're sending it out via email, and the owner has scribbled any adjustments over that one, then they're the things that we need to make sure we are aware of. And again, so when the documents come back, then what we're doing is we're naming the documents, and we'll get to that in a second, using the version control. Okay, using the updated proof of ownership, if required, correct the owner card in PropertyMe, including the registered owner's names, company address, salutation, ABN, ACN, etc. So it's really important. So step 1 of the full owner profile is to make sure that we first understand who the registered owner is. If we don't have an understanding of who the registered owner is, we don't have evidence to state that it's either a council rate or a title. They're the two that I would use only. So I wouldn't be using a water rates or a contract of sale or those sorts of things. It needs to be a council rate. The preference is a property title. Once we understand who the registered owner is, then it's important to go back and do the data entry and clean up in the property folder if we need to. Rename all the documents using the file naming process and version control. And I've got Trello cards inside around that. And so what we're looking for is we would be putting in the prefix at the beginning. Is it compliant, non-compliant, expired, invalid, those prefix. And then we would put the document title. So it's an OIF, it's an ELMA, so the abbreviation, rental minimum standards declaration, maybe a disclosure statement, fee schedule. So we use the documents, then the address, then the date. And so that becomes the file name of the PDF. Why do we do that? So that when we're uploading documents into the property folder inside of PropertyMe, it's really easy to identify the most recent one. If we're looking inside of our Google Drive, and if I have 4 ELMA, 4 exclusive leasing managing agency authority, and they don't have a date, and they're all called the same thing, then I won't know which one's the most recent one. So as a result, I'm going to have to open up all 4. And so what we're looking for is the process whereby it's really easy for a person at a glance to look at the document, understand whether it's compliant, non-compliant, understand what type of document it is, understand which property it's relevant for, and understand which date it was last signed. And so what we're looking for, we would always use the person who signed last as the key date. So if the agent has signed a new authority, sent it out on the 15th of the month, and it's gone to one owner and they've signed it on the 16th of the month, and then it's gone to the second owner and it's been countersigned on the 17th of the month, the document date would be the 17th of the month. So we're using that last date. Download and remove any older documents from PropertyMe and save them to Google Drive. I mentioned that earlier. So inside of the PropertyMe owner card, renter card, and property profile, the only documents that should be are the most recent, current documents. So I don't want to see inside of there 4 lots of proof of ownership. We need one. So we're trying to minimize the amount of data that's saved in PropertyMe so that it can be easily relied upon. If the property manager or at any stage wants to reference future former documents, then they can go directly through to the Google Drive because they'll all be sitting in there. Remember, we never delete documents. They would always be saved inside of the Google Drive. At each stage of the audit, upload and replace the most recent current documents of the owner card visible to the owner and remove previous versions from PropertyMe. Each version of the document is to be saved in the external drive, as I just mentioned. So everything's saved in the Google Drive, and if there was, maybe we've just updated the owner's instruction form and that's been updated in March of 2026, and we had a previous one sitting inside of PropertyMe from February of 2024. And so what we would do is we would remove that, delete it, download that from PropertyMe into the Google Drive. It should already be there, but if it's not, and then we would remove it from the database, and then we would upload the most recent one and make the document visible to the owner. So when the owner can go onto their portal, they can see all of those documents. If the most recent document is on file, is non-compliant, expired, old, or invalid, then upload the document into PropertyMe using the feature not visible to the owner for their property portal. And the reason for that is because we really don't want to be putting up, let's just say, for example, we've sent out a new authority and it's come back and for some reason it's non-compliant. And what would be make an authority non-compliant? Well, let's just say that we've made the assumption that the property's owned in a husband and wife's name, and we send it out, and when they return the document shows that the property is owned in one of the owner's names. And so therefore that document is non-compliant. Even though we've just sent it out, it's non-compliant. And so what we're looking for is we wouldn't want to then go and air that to the client straight away. We'd want to have a conversation with them and say we need to update this again. But you don't want to be updating documents, uploading documents into the property file that are you can't rely upon, and the owner will get to see those. So that's why we use the not visible to the owner option. Use the labels to reflect the current document status on file, highlighting compliant, missing, needed, whatever the status is. So use the label sequence. And our labels we have, if I come back through to here, 493 label options. And so everything that the property, everything that the property manager or department manager, maybe even the virtual assistant, trust accountant, any person that's got a touch point inside of this file, anything that they need to know about the property should be easily identifiable through the labels. So I'll just move myself over to here. And always add detailed file and activity notes into this task. I'll show you that in a second. Any high risk issues identified as part of the audit should be noted as a separate note and include the property manager and team leader by using the @ feature. Now, what will happen is if there is a, let's just say that somebody was doing an audit and they wanted to make me aware of that, they would have written @Michael, and then it shows up over to here, where it shows up, as soon as I open up my PropertyMe, it shows up anything that's been addressed to me specifically using the @ feature will show up in my notes. Only close the task off once each line has completed and checked off, demonstrating that there's a valid and compliant document both in the property folder and uploaded to PropertyMe for each of the line actions applicable for this audit. Okay, let's just come in and we'll use one of these. Let's just see if there's, okay, there's no, there isn't a workflow for this particular property. So what we would do, I'm going to use this, I come across and I would add the workflow, so 3702. Now, In this situation, what I wouldn't do is I probably wouldn't add the tenant. No relevance. There's absolutely no relevance whatsoever to be adding the tenant when we're doing the property owner profile audit. What I would be doing is certainly putting in today's date. The status is already preset. There's our instructions, and I'm going to save and open that. Now, automatically, the task will say up here as not started yet, and the progress will be to do. Now, remember, if I was to come across, there isn't any notes here at the moment. If I was to come across and I was to start working through this as a workflow, I'm going to, the very first one, when creating the audit task, remove and delete any of the options not applicable. Now I'm going to start here because I'll start deleting, and you'll notice over to the side, it changes to complete. Now the owner here is an individual, Lucy Menzies. So what I can do is I can come over to here and I can delete this. I can delete the trust. Delete the trust. Not relevant. And let's just say, so this property is 75 Bondi Road, Mentone. It's a standalone property, so we don't have any reference whatsoever to, and it doesn't have a pool. So I can delete that, and I can delete the owner's corporation. So I can delete this. The first part of the task is to go through not embedded network, and there's no pets. Okay, all right. So what I would then start to do is I'll start to work through the documents. Now, if I was to go to the property here, and that was the particular property, and I had a series of documents, then I'd be able to work through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a few assumptions just for the simple task of working through this. Let's just say that the property was, we had a copy of the title, so we can click that one off. We've received the updated owner's instruction form, and we have the photo ID and license. We can click that one off. No need for a power of attorney, so we can delete that one. Do we have a valid enforceable authority? I'm going to say no, just for the sake of this one. Let's just say that we've updated the owner's instruction forms, but we haven't updated the authority inside of here. And now what would happen virtually from here on down, we really need to sort of be careful of what we're going to say yes to. And the reason for that is because I would come across here now, put my note in here, and I always start off the notes with my initials and the date that I've completed them. MF audited the property and found the ALMA invalid, needs to be updated. Spell that correctly. And then, as I said, I could use the @ feature, and that would show up over here. I'll add that note. And so I'll keep moving through here. Now, what I probably wouldn't do is I wouldn't do a full audit and have individual notes. What I would do is I would have a collective. So I'd go through and I would say, do we have the updated information for this? Do we have the right document? Yes, yes, yes. And then I would collate this into one series of summary notes here. So can we confirm the owner's contact details of both physical address? And so what I do is I go across to Lucy. Okay, we've got a postal and a physical address. So she's an interstate owner. And so in that scenario, I would start to then put interstate. The owner lives interstate, and we start to fill in. We start to fill in our documents. So ALMA, so it's invalid. We've just notified that one because we've just had we've signed that. Put a note inside of there, and so confirm the names and the proof of ownership and the ALMA and property profile are the same. Yeah, we can say that they are. Confirm and update the owner's contact, both physical and postal. Yeah, we've got that. We just checked that. Confirm for multiple registered owners. Okay, well, we've noticed here there's a single owner, not relevant, so we can delete that. Update the owner's fees inside of PropertyMe, and so I come back over to the owner, and what I would do here is I have a look at the fees. All right, we've already gone through and we've updated all of their fees, and they're all relevant to make sure that they apply to this particular property. And so I'm going to say yes, update the fee. So you can start to see how we can work through the audit. Confirm the renter transfer assignment fees, including the ALMA, and add it to the fee schedule. Okay, we'll go back to our fees and we're looking at the renter assignment. And so that's a $330 fee. So I'm just going to check for that $330, and there we are there. Now, what I would be doing is making sure that might be the issue as to the reasons why that's not enforceable. So we've got a fee of $330. It was in a previous managing agency authority, but it's not in the current one. And I would delete that as well. That's just my note when I'm copying the templates. And so we might make a note around that. Owner's instruction form. Let's say, for example, we do have that one because we received the proof of ownership, we received the photo ID, so I'm going to click that one. Do we have a copy of the bank details? Yes, we do. But what I would do is I would go into the owner's instruction form, print that particular page as a single PDF, and that particular page would then be sitting inside of the Google Drive. So the owner's instruction form might be 25 pages, but when we get to the bank details form, we go to that particular page, maybe 1 or 2 pages, print that as a PDF and save that inside of the owner's docs in the Google Drive. And so we slowly build this out. The property information is all of our key subfolders are here, and then we've got our owner. And what we're looking for is our proof of ownership, our managing agency authority, level of service and fees, owner's instruction, disclosure statements, and our bank details. So when we were going to put that particular 2 pages back, it would live in here. Any previous ones would live there, and the current one lives here. So I've gone and built all of the documents. Everything that we need has a subfolder. So authority to sign would be inside of here. So if we've got an authority to sign the documents, if we've got that needs to be saved in there as well. Now, remembering what we're also doing is as we're working through here, we're making a mental note of what labels need to be updated inside of here. So let's just say we have authority to sign, and we have that. And you'll notice that that label's a blue one, which means that it's fine, it's acceptable, compliant, acceptable, current, usable, whereas the orange ones are meant to be an alert, things that are an issue or things that need to stand out and bring it to our attention. So in this scenario, what we're doing is we have a missing ELMA, and so what we would also do is we would say ELMA, so we need an updated one, and the ELMA here, non-compliant, not assignable. Why is that important? Well, we would note if we were looking at either selling the rent roll or getting a bank valuation, or even just for fees, we don't have an assignable, we don't have a valid authority on file. Now, if we were relying on the previous one from years ago, that's okay, we could probably still get away with that, but we still need a new one. And if we don't have an authority that's on file that's valid, we may not have a fee schedule, might not have been signed. So we have authority, or start typing fees, and it says old fee schedule on file, fees, missing valid fee schedule, authority to charge. That might be in one of the other in the property. And so what we're doing is we're building out the labels here. We would also be coming to the property and build out the labels here. So authority, no authority to charge. That's what we're looking at there. So at the property itself, it's telling us there we don't have an authority to charge fees. So we come back over to as we're working through. So now we have an updated bank form. Confirm the bank details and PropertyMe match the one that's on the director. So if we do have a bank details, and we would go back, we would look. We've got the owner's instruction form. We would then go back to our property and our owner, and we're looking at our bank details. Not there. Here, we've got our bank details. Let's just say that Lucy's details are correct. We can come back to here, confirm the bank details are correct. Now, the note here also says prior to changing, inform a director if you are going to change. But the bank details are correct. Do they have given us authority to sign documents? Yes, we've already cited that. Have they given us consent for electronic receipt of documents? Yes. And we would work through all of these items. So, confirm the owner's given the agency authority to erect a for lease board. We're putting those into the labels. Minimum standards declaration, rental minimum standards inspection compliance. Do we have that? Do we have an inspection report? Photographs. Has the owner given us authority to manage the smoke, gas, electric, and swimming pool if there was one? And if the answer is no, they haven't, then we might need to send out a new form, and that's an authority, a property safety inspection authority, and we might need to send that back. Now, if that came back, then we would be saving that on each document would be saved. So we save the authority as a smoke detector authority. Then we save another one as a gas, then another one as electric, and we would individualize that. If the owner gave us authority to manage the insurance, then we'd be ticking those ones. Now, if, for example, we don't have the smoke, gas, and electric, what we don't do is we don't delete those, we just leave them, and then we would make a note in here. So anything that we have, do we have a copy of the current reminders? Now, if we come over to here, if we go back to the property, the smoke, gas, and electric, so the insurance inside of here, landlord's insurance renewal has not been set up. And so if I was to come back to our audit, we can't tick those because the reminder's not been set up. Do we have a disclosure statement not more than 90 days old? Now, we might have a tenancy inside of this property. Let's have a look. And that tenancy's been there from 2025. Did we need a disclosure statement back then? Yeah, we did. And that might be an older document. And if we're missing that, then we need to make sure that we make a note that we're missing that document. So there should have been a disclosure statement because that was a new lease. Even though the tenant first moved in 2020, the lease, the most recent lease was 2025, and therefore there should be a disclosure statement. And if there wasn't, then we would make a note of it here, and we would also use the labels as it's a high risk because we don't have a disclosure. So we're going to work all the way through here. Download the Google folder and any documents saved from PropertyMe. Yeah, we've downloaded, we've talked about that. Upload the most recent documents. Now I'd come to my Google Drive and any of the recent documents. Now, initially what I would do is I would save everything inside the owner, the little subfolder there, and I might have 20 PDFs sitting inside of that file until a stage where I'm comfortable I have all the documents, and then what I would do is I would work back and start to put them into here. Just use this as a bit of a dumping folder to start with, and we put all of our owner documents in there until we can figure out what's relevant and what's not, what we're missing, what we have, what we don't. Any of the advertising documents, photographs, floor plans, videos, text would go in through to there, the internet text, and then of course any of our renter documents go inside of there. So we come back and we would be ticking these, do we have process the smoke, gas, and electric and reminders? Well, there's no reminders being set up for this particular property, so I would leave that. Create our file notes. Yeah, we're going to create our file notes, and then update our labels as well. Update the labels here. Let's just say I've done that, update the labels. And so now what you have is you have a partially worked through. It's in progress. Because it's in progress, I'm going to go and change this label. So I'm just going to put workflow, and it would be an incomplete workflow. Now, if we completed this workflow, it'll be blue. And so what we're doing when we're looking at this, incomplete. And so now what we're able to do, we've got our notes here of anything that's missing. We now have our documents sitting inside of the Google Drive. We've got our documents sitting inside of the owner folder, Bondi. We would upload the documents, either hide or show to the client. We would upload those documents, and they would live in here. Now, for this is a demo file, so I don't have anything there. So what's the real benefit of doing this? Firstly, it gives consistency, an oversight of what's happening inside of that particular portfolio. It identifies any risk areas. It identifies what we're doing really well. It identifies documents that are missing. And it's a good way for us to keep track of what's happening inside of the database. Now, if you were to, hopefully that's explained how to conduct workflow 2, the owner file. For more information, you can either go back through to our YouTube page, because we've got lots of documents and lots of videos inside of here, or come across to the website for future, for other documents. There's loads of resources sitting inside of here. Training, free agency resources. There's a heap of those sitting inside of here as well. You can see we've got all sorts of checklists that are available inside of there. Hopefully that's helped, and remember, this would be applicable for property managers, particularly virtual staff that are processing a lot of these tasks, but ideal for a director or a team leader to implement strong workflows to make sure that they're developing a level of consistency and compliance, customer service consistency and compliance throughout their department. Thanks for that. Hope this has helped. Bye for now.